Okay, so welcome everyone. It's so good to have you all here. I'll do a very quick welcome before handing over to Fatou. So, my name is Armstrong Gates, Boyden Program Enhancement Manager, and I've had the absolute pleasure of being able to mentor this team of students as change agents who are leading on the Skills for AI and Digital Innovation project. There's so much we want to cover. We've had to focus on 3 sessions. The students have done a great job in bringing this together. This is all theirs. I'll hand over to Fatou now, who will be able to do introductions and tell you everything.
Thank you so much, Amber. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our final session for Skills for AI and Digital Innovation. So today we're going to be exploring AI for university and work. And we've had an incredible journey so far with these 3 sessions. So we're very excited to round it off with some great insights and some practical skills that you could use. So just a recap of the team who you've met for the past 2 sessions. My name is Fatou. I'm the CEO of the Skills for AI and Innovation course. And then we have Lorenzo, who is our CTO, and he ran our previous session that was on AI for digital innovation, where he showed us powerful, creative tools that you can use with AI. And then we finally have Saara, who is our operational lead, who led the first session, our panel session called You, Me, and AI, where we heard about the psychological, philosophical, and ethical insights about AI from a brilliant panel. So that's our team, just a quick reminder. And then we have covered about 2 sessions, and we are finally on our 3rd session, AI for University, Work and Employment. And then, so I'm gonna just kind of give you an outline of how today's session is going to go, so you have a better idea. So first, we're going to start off with a brief introduction where I'm going to introduce you to our experts today, Simon and Judith, who I'll talk about more in a second. Then we are going to go into our core session, which is where Simon will be coming in. So that will go in for about 40 minutes. Then we will have our academic session, which is where Judith is going to come in. And then we are going to slide in a quick activity there. Sorry, I forgot to put it on the sides. Then we will finally have our Q&A session and then the check-in and conclusion of everything. So to first introduce our experts today, we have Simon and Judith. So first up with Simon, he is a career consultant at the University of Exeter at the Career Zone with deep experience in digital employability. So he's passionate about helping students build a more impactful, future-ready CV, especially as we enter the age of AI. So next we have Judith, who is going to be talking about our academics. So she is a senior lecturer in education at the University of Exeter here as well. Her work explores the intersection of AI, teaching, and learning, particularly how AI is changing academic practice, dialogue, and student engagement in higher education. And she is particularly interested, in how AI transforms teaching and learning. And she will be talking about our academic, how AI works with academics right after Simon. So that is just a very quick introduction on the two of them. So I will hand over to them in a second, but as some of you have come for our first and second question, we usually always invite this reflection point, this reflection question for you to kind of think about now. And then after you hear from our experts and we've done an activity or two, perhaps you can reflect on what you thought now versus what you think at the end of the session. So our first reflection point is, if everyone uses AI to write CVs, how do we stand out? So you can have a think about this, and Simon is going to touch on points around this. And you can kind of reflect on what you think at the end of the session. You can put it in the chat. And then with academics, is relying on AI undermining the core purpose of learning? So these are quite open questions that you can have a think about, and then we will come back to them at the end of the session. So that was just a very quick introduction from Amber and myself, and I'm going to hand over to Simon now, and he's going to start his session on work and employability.
Thank you very much, Fatou. Hopefully everyone can see my slides there. Yeah, that's a really nice reflection to actually start this session as we move into sort of AI, careers and employability. We'll be looking at the impact of AI on the recruitment process, what that means for you as students, and how you can use generative AI more effectively in your preparation as well. So yeah, as Fatou mentioned, I'm Simon Allington. I'm a careers consultant at the University of Exeter in the business school. So my role is all about helping students and graduates make informed decisions, develop their employability skills, and navigate the recruitment and selection process successfully. Do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect on there using that QR code. So I've got quite a lot to cover in 40 minutes today. So we're going to start off by sharing some insights on the impact of AI on careers and employability to set the scene, hopefully prompt some ideas, some thoughts, maybe bust a few myths. There's a lot of myths going around AI and what that means in the recruitment process and how it's actually being used. And then we'll move into more practical things of what you can take from this session in your own practice about how to use generative AI effectively. If you do have any questions, thoughts, do pop them in the chat as we go through the session. I'll try and keep an eye on it, but if not, I'll come back to them later on. Okay. So starting off then with the impact of AI on the recruitment and selection process. So one of the most immediate impacts of AI in recent years has been the increasing use of generative AI by job candidates, which is sort of overwhelming recruiters and challenging traditional recruitment methods. So graduate recruiters are being flooded by AI generated applications, as Fatou alluded to. And now we're seeing sort of on average 140 applications per graduate scheme vacancy in 2024, which is nearly a 60% increase on the year prior. So it sort of correlates with the rise of generative AI, and we can sort of put that high volume down to that usage. But employers are reporting that through poor generative AI use, many candidates are sounding the same. Their applications lack depth. They're not providing specific evidence or examples that demonstrate their suitability, or they can see candidates reading scripted responses during interviews, which all gives a very bad impression, and they're getting very tired of reading that. So that reflection at the start of how to stand out is very, very pertinent. Alongside sort of the application stage, also aptitude and personality tests that recruiters use to sort of measure candidate suitability are also vulnerable to generative AI, as newer sort of multimodal versions of AI where images, screenshots can be used as prompts. Generative AI is scoring above average on these tests as well. So that's presenting another challenge to recruiters. It's important to note that paid for versions of AI tools perform significantly better than free tools on this. So linking back to the ethical sessions that you've had as well, obvious concerns there around social mobility and the digital divide. So how are recruiters responding? So 50% of employers are expecting to move to a recruitment approach that focuses on evaluating candidates based on their skills, rather than on their educational past work experience. So this idea of skills-based hiring, which isn't new, right? So graduate recruiters have long assessed candidates based on examples of their skills from what they've done or achieved, rather than on your degree title or previous job titles. But with generative AI, there's a trend emerging towards methods where candidates must show their ability and skills in action rather than just talking or writing about them. Traditionally, that took place at assessment centres or in-person interviews at later stages of the recruitment process. But due to generative AI, employers may be increasingly seeking to assess these skills in action earlier in the screening process to manage those large number of applications and to have an authentic insight into in that initial sifting process. So online task-based assessments, which are not reliant on language-based responses, but observe how an applicant responds to a situation, and through algorithms and AI evaluate their skills. That's a trend that is emerging. So yeah, 46% of employers are expecting to use AI in their future recruitment process. So the role that AI plays in recruitment is evolving. This often generates fears and headlines around robots hiring robots. No, it's not as simple as that. And actually, when we look at how recruiters are currently using AI, 21% are using it in some form, but actually not in the way that candidates often think, and a lot of the concerns I hear students have. So how are employers using AI in the recruitment process? So we can see 21% are using it in some form. Most aren't using it at the moment because 72% state a preference towards a more human-centric approach, and there are those valid concerns around potential for bias and in AI decision making. So recruiters are approaching this cautiously in the UK at least, particularly due to increasing regulation around HR tasks as a high-risk activity in EU regulations and things like that. But what we can take from this is, I see a lot of students who come to me and say, oh, AI rejected me, AI rejected my CV. When on here, only less than 1% of employers are actually using AI to screen CVs. There's a lot of myths around applicant tracking systems, ATS, and how it works and how recruiters actually use it. So in practice, it's often it's human reviewers who are seeing your applications. The automated rejection part might come from the pre-screening, the eligibility questions at the start, where it's asking things like right to work, or if it's requiring a driving license, or some of these so-called kill questions where it just sort of automatically rejects it. They might use AI for that. But I can answer any questions about ATS as well later. What we can take from this is where most employers are currently using AI is in these online psychometric assessments, and that's likely where it's going to be expanding. It's more based around sort of algorithmic evaluation of these online task-based assessments that will likely become nearer and nearer to the start of that recruitment process. Amazon is one organization, for example, who have been recently looking at scrapping CVs and applications in favor of these online task-based assessments. So keep that in mind, see that coming. And this is why at the University of Exeter we've invested in practice tools that prepare you for these emerging changes in the recruitment process. So if you haven't been there before, do go to Graduates First. So it's completely free for Exeter students, and on there we have these game-based assessments, these AI-powered assessments that increasingly graduate recruiters are using. They're sort of more interactive games, and it uses algorithms to test certain skills. Those of you interested in banking and finance, you'll likely come up against this one where you have to blow up a balloon, and it measures your risk aversion and your tolerance for risk, for example. So do make use of that. Now, looking more broadly, at AI and the impact on future of jobs, we're often interested in the number of jobs and how AI is going to affect the number of jobs. And the World Economic Forum, through capturing the perspectives of over 1,000 employers, forecasts that in the next 5 years, or by 2030, 92 million jobs are projected to be displaced, and 170 million jobs are projected to be created. So job creation around specialist AI related areas, or areas that have come up from that disruption. So AI is generating a net employment increase of 7%, or 78 million jobs overall, which to some degree gets away from the scaremongering of robots are coming to take all of our jobs headlines that we often see, but it does underscore that urgent need for reskilling, retraining, being able to take career pivots, have the flexibility that is needed for effective career management. But looking at this area of job creation, so this 170 million on the right here, we are starting to see this reflected in the graduate labour market across all sectors. So this chart on the left here shows a significant growth of graduate employers recruiting to digital and AI roles. And the chart on the right implies that this growth is happening outside of the digital and IT sector, as all industries are starting to adapt to this digital transformation and seeking graduates, professionals with AI specialisms and with AI skills to support their activities. But coming back to this large blue area in the middle, what's happening here to the vast majority of people and roles? Well, it's not necessarily the number, it's the nature of jobs that is changing. So this idea of AI augmented roles, where AI is increasingly woven into the tasks and activities that you'll be doing. And whether you know it or not, you're going to be working with AI in some form across all sectors. So being able to work and collaborate with AI means skills requirements are changing. So what does that look like in practice? So this interplay between humans, machines, and algorithms is redefining these job roles across industries, and automation and augmentation is expected to drive these changes in how the ways of working in the future. So again, from the World Economic Forum here, they're reporting that today 47% of work tasks are performed mainly by humans alone. Okay, with 22% performed mainly by technology, so machines, software, algorithms, and 30% a combination of the both, that collaboration. But by 2030, employers are expecting these proportions to even out, to be evenly split across these three areas. So the reduction in that human-only share of work tasks due to automation, but also a rise in that human technology collaboration in the middle. Now, important to note is this is only looking at how tasks are shared between humans, technology, and a combination of the two. It's not considering the total potential change in the absolute amount of work getting done. So in other words, both humans and machines might be significantly more productive in 2030, performing higher value tasks, more tasks overall. So it's not about humans running out of things to do, it's just the nature of that work is changing. But as students and graduates, you'll be working in collaboration with AI a lot more, but also deciding on what tasks to delegate to AI for automation. So you need to be able to develop the skills, the critical for the subject knowledge to decide on the levels of delegation that AI should be given for certain tasks. So let's look at skills then. What skills do you need to navigate and succeed in your future in the age of AI? And overwhelmingly, it's a combination of both skill sets. AI and human skills are must-haves. So looking at this top 10 list of skills on the rise identified by the World Economic Forum, there are many more below this. This is just the top, the sort of fastest growing skills. Unsurprisingly, AI, data, tech literacy are the fastest growing skills at the top of this list and have the fastest growth in demand between now and 2030. But interestingly, as AI ramps up, so too does the need for human-centered skills, which are also rising in importance and are increasingly critical for success in the workplace. So why are employers looking for this in a so-called age of AI? Well, firstly, it's looking at this range of soft skills on the left here. These are the uniquely human skills that are required for tasks that AI can't replicate. The relationship building, the communication, the leadership, things that AI can't do, and things we don't want AI to do as well. So in terms of these soft skills, we know this is what graduate recruiters predominantly look for in candidates, more so than specific degree discipline. Most employers accept all degree disciplines, and increasingly more so than academic grades. Some employers are removing that 2-1 grade requirement. So it's all this other stuff that you do on top of your academics, that where you and within your academics to demonstrate these skills. And going back to how recruiters are using AI at the start, in a weird sort of way, recruiters are using AI technology to help find evidence of human skills, which is an interesting point in itself. They're using these online task-based assessments to find evidence of these human-centered skills. Secondly, navigating these fast-changing job market also requires strong career management skills. As AI continues to change and shape and redefine roles, your ability to adapt, upskill, embrace lifelong learning is essential. So having the resilience, the flexibility to respond to new opportunities, new challenges as industries evolve is absolutely crucial. And a lot of what we focus on in the Career Zone is encouraging students to think creatively about career options and the rapidly evolving world that we're living at the moment, and develop the flexibility, the skills to thrive in that environment. And thirdly, these human skills also drive the effective and responsible application of AI itself, and actually enable AI literacy, where we can work collaboratively with it. So if you think about it, AI is only as effective as the humans using it or deciding how to use it in practice. So it's actually enabling that AI literacy. But what do we mean by AI literacy? It's thrown about a lot. AI skills, AI literacy. What do we actually mean in practice? AI literacy is not just knowing about how to use AI tools. It's about knowing why use them, when to use them, how to apply AI critically within a specific domain. So broadly speaking, we can probably view AI literacy as the overlap and interaction between AI knowledge, subject knowledge of the domain in which it's been applied, and these human skills that underpin and drive effective and responsible use over the long term. So obviously we need to know, how AI works, the practical aspects of using it, which as students and as keen users of AI, you're developing these all the time as the more you experiment with it. But the more important aspect is the why use it and when to use it, which requires this strong subject knowledge and actually the self-awareness of that subject knowledge. Do you know your own blind spots? Do you have the ability to correct AI and the outputs that it gives you? So it's looking at the intentional use of AI based on strong subject knowledge. And when you go into your careers and you're thinking about sectors, it's researching how is AI being used in that sector, and do you have enough knowledge about the sector and the work and the job to know, okay, AI is being used critically in that domain for that reason. So going forward, it's looking at what level of delegation should be given to AI for specific use cases. And I'm going to move on to how to use generative AI to help with your applications. And a simple example of what I'm getting at here is going back to candidates using generative AI poorly to write applications. In order to use AI effectively to help you to do that, you must first know what makes a good application. You must know what employers are looking for. You must have reflected on your own experience and achievements. AI is often seen as a shortcut to that, but it is just a tool to help with the drafting process in that scenario. That you are the subject matter expert in yourself and your own previous experiences and your skills, and AI is a tool. Generative AI is a tool to help you with that. That strong subject knowledge of yourself and why you're using it is required at the input stage to enable effective prompting of AI, and at the output stage, the critical evaluation of its outputs. Is it saying what you want it to say? Is it good practice? Is that star example actually good, or is it just a generic thing that they've got from the internet? So it's making sure that subject knowledge is in the lead there. And we'll go through into sort of using generative AI effectively in job applications now, which will hopefully help you to think about that. And I'm going to introduce a model that hopefully you can take away to as a practical model to use in your work. But first, just retouching about generative artificial intelligence. There is a bit of a flaw in the name artificial intelligence. When we're talking about AI, it gives the impression that large language models like ChatGPT are thinking when they're not. They're using a data set they've been trained on to predict the next likely word as they write the response. Just like predictive text on steroids, as a very simplistic way of thinking about it. And it's known for making up false facts, false information that aren't based on real data. That is getting better every day, but still that subject knowledge is absolutely needed, and the understanding of why you're using it. You know, the training data, and it's huge amount of text scraped from across the internet. It's impossible to vet for reliability and lack of bias in that response. So always fact checking, etc. But most pertinent here is because of how large language models work and how they're trained, studies have showed the increasing homogeneity of content that has been created by AI. Like we say, everyone is starting to sound the same with applications. And that's exactly coming back to that reflection that Fatou mentioned is, okay, how do we stand out in that world? Firstly, coming back to that subject knowledge, what do employers want? What does a strong application look like? What do they want to see? This is the subject knowledge or the domain knowledge that you need to have before using AI tools to help with that work. So employers want specific examples of your unique personal experiences and achievements that provide evidence for the skills they're looking for. They need evidence of your passion and motivation for that specific company. They want to hear you and your authentic voice and your personality coming through in your applications. And of course, they want accurate grammar and spelling and compelling use of language structure and so on. So some things there that generative AI can absolutely help with, but it can't lead that process. You must be driving the content. So it's important to not let the impressive speed and perceived intelligence of generative AI make you forget what a successful application looks like and involves. So keeping these in the forefront of your mind to think critically as we go into these activities. So what I want you to do is look at an example cover letter that has been generated by ChatGPT based on quite a basic prompt. I've asked ChatGPT to write a cover letter for a graduate program at Bloomberg and pasted the job description. So what I'd like you to do is follow that QR code to a Padlet containing that cover letter. And in 5 minutes, I just want you to spend a couple of minutes to read that AI cover letter. The job description's below as well. Just scan it, and then what do you think is good or bad about that cover letter? And then I want you to pop your thoughts in the chat. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. If the QR code doesn't work for whatever reason, just let me know in the chat. I'll post the link as well.
Yes, can you please put the link in the chat? Thank you.
Yeah, no problems.
Apologies, could you repeat where you want us to put our thoughts on this? In the chat or?
Yeah, just in this meeting chat. Yeah, that's great. And then
Sure.
I can
Thank
pick
you.
up any good points and bad points and reflections. That's great. I can see some responses coming in there. That's brilliant. Yeah, there's a lot of fluff. I like that, Ollie. Well done. Yeah, lots of fluff, and that's not really helping. Interestingly, Lorenzo said the writing quality is quite high. It's a really interesting point. We'll touch on that. Yeah, Great, Ghislaine. There seems to be nothing personal about the reasons why the candidate is applying and their experiences. Thanks, Megan. Better to have a specific name rather than dear hiring manager. Fantastic. Some of that subject knowledge of what a good cover letter looks like coming through there. Michael, non-specific, talks about positives of the position very generally. Yeah. OTT, Alison, nice and brief. I like that over the top. It seems very general. Thanks, Lauren. Possibly a bit long. Yep. Fantastic, Zoe. Yep. James, it lists skills, no specifics, and repeats itself. Okay, fantastic. Well, it looks like we didn't actually need the 5 minutes for that. It's fairly obvious where things are going wrong with it. Yeah, so it's very general. So let's look at how we can improve that then. Do keep your thoughts coming in on the chat, and I'll try and pick them up as we go. So yeah, good points. Like Lorenzo said, it's actually the quality of the writing on face value is quite high. There's no spelling errors. There's no sort of grammar or syntax errors, apart from the American English terms. So if you're applying for a UK position, the state, the zip code, the Zs where there should be S's if you're using British English, things like that. And it sounds articulate at face value. And it uses some keywords from the phrases from the job description because you've prompted with that. And overall, it's a great way to get started in the drafting process. It speeds up that sort of blank page syndrome where you don't know where to start. So it can be sort of a way to get you started. But actually, when we look at the negatives that many of you have already started to spot, it's lacking that depth. There's no sort of authenticity. It doesn't give those specific and unique personal experience. Without being fed the right information, the cover letter doesn't say anything meaningful. So ChatGPT in this case is unable to capture the unique personal experiences, the achievements, and the nuances that make you stand out and make you suitable for the job. It actually provides no evidence whatsoever, so that would not get through that stage. And like some of you mentioned, it doesn't give specific information about why they want to work for the company. It just states they're impressed and excited by Bloomberg, but doesn't actually tell them why. So no genuine connection back to the individual candidate. It will have identical wording and phrasing to many other applicants that the recruiter receives, which gives a very negative impression, shows that the candidate doesn't care about getting the job, and it doesn't make them stand out amongst hundreds or thousands of others. And because it hasn't been prompted with relevant, accurate information to use in drafting up certain aspects, it's actually fabricating that the candidate has strong experience of certain areas which aren't necessarily true and can lead to dishonesty in applications and when it's not being reflected or reviewed. Okay, so what can we do about it then? Well, how might we improve this AI output? So this is where I'm going to introduce a model that might help you with this thinking of input and output. So the 3 Ps. Firstly, preparation, that research and self-reflection. Relying on AI completely in your writing leads to all those negative things that we've just seen there. It hinders the development of your skills of self-reflection, critical thinking, which are essential to making career decisions and at interviews, getting across your skills, etc. And then it's using your research, your self-reflection to create a better prompt, one that is more specific and detailed, and we'll look at what that looks like in a moment. And then it's personalizing, making it your own. You must review and edit the output to further refine it and make it your own as you go and start to use that. So let's look at these one by one. So research and self-reflection. You want to be evidencing the competencies required. The AI doesn't know you or your specific experiences without you telling it. So you still must reflect on your sources of evidence, having researched what the recruiter is looking for. What are the skills, what are the qualities, what's on the person specification, the AI doesn't know you or what makes you suitable for that job. Only you know that, and only you can reflect on it. You are the subject matter expert in your own experiences. So you need to identify what competencies they're looking for and reflect on your experiences to identify relevant experiences, achievements that you can use as evidence. By all means, you can use AI in a different sense to help with that reflection, to say, I did this, I did that. What skills might have been part of that experience, and then reflect on, okay, was that true? Was that in reality? Did that come around? But you cannot automate this essential research and self-reflection, which is required for applications. Now, I often get asked, can I just upload my CV for AI to read and match, and it will match with the job description for me? A few things to consider with this. There are obviously privacy risks. There's a lot of personal information on a CV, so you're essentially giving that to an external company. So check the privacy policy, check your settings, or anonymize, etc. Also, is the CV tailored to the job description in the first place? If it isn't, then the AI still won't have the relevant information to use. And again, it may start fabricating information or being very surface level, very generic, not getting to the detail. So you'll still need to reflect and direct the AI to achievements and examples that you think are the most appropriate and want to highlight to an employer. And like I said, bypassing any self-reflection about your suitability, about your motivations for the role, isn't really beneficial in the long term. You know, how do you know if you truly want the role? How do you know if you would be suitable for the role and competitive in future stages of selection? And actually going into an interview, knowing that you've reflected and sourced strong evidence for every skill they're looking for means you're confident and you're far more likely to actually get through the interview as well. So in terms of skills and evidencing that, but also in terms of evidencing your passion and motivation for the company, employers want to employ candidates who want to work for them specifically. And you need to demonstrate this passion by researching the company, their values, their culture, their initiatives, any recent developments, and then providing evidence as to how those things that you found out connect with you. So reflecting on what excites and connects with you. And similar to the other slide, generative AI tools are a great starting point for that as well, for researching a company. Obviously, always fact check and do your own digging elsewhere, but it can be a good starting point. But you still need to reflect on why you're enthusiastic about working for them, and giving examples to demonstrate your value. So show, don't tell. Again, linking it back to personal experiences. And then prompting. So I know you've had a bit of content around prompting already, so I won't go into too much detail, but as you know, generative AI models are sensitive to how their instructions are formatted, increasingly less so as they become more intuitive and start to understand what the user's intent, but still you do need to format or think carefully about how you're instructing it. And as you've probably heard already, clarity, specificity are key, making sure it's concise, clearly communicates the information you want, avoiding generic results, really understanding what you want. So again, going back to that reflection and providing context, setting parameters, experimenting with different prompts, and starting from the principle, if the result isn't close to where I want to get to, the prompt is probably not detailed or good enough. So a useful guide to follow. There's lots out there about, use this prompt and you'll get everything that you ever need. A bit skeptical of all that, but there's some useful principles underneath, these guides and prompting guidance that you can use. Give context. Give it a clear background for the question, so it understands the situation and subject matter. Set parameters for the interaction to help it generate an answer that's appropriate length, format for what you specifically need. Give it the information, give it the detail, pull out the aspects that you want it to focus on. If you want to talk about a particular brilliant achievement that you had in a previous experience that demonstrates a skill, make sure you're inputting that and adding that into your informed prompt. Check your own assumptions. So keep that in mind. Are you assuming that a star answer should look a particular way? Are you able to, correct the AI's response to what it gives you? And redirect. So provide specific examples, scenarios, refocus the output as needed. And yeah, don't be afraid to give it feedback, ask for clarification, reframe it, and use your own knowledge to see any gaps in what it gives you. It's not going to be perfect. It's a starting point. So you must have your own subject domain knowledge to fill in any blank spots and encourage a more refined response as you continue to reprompt. So a new prompt might look something like this, based on what we've covered so far. And actually, as you sort of read this, you can start to see that it's sounding like a cover letter already, because of the level of detail and the level of sort of reflection and connecting to evidence that is needed for an effective prompt. So it's giving the context, it's giving the format, one side of A4, UK business letter. It's pinpointing what each paragraph should focus on. So why me? So about my achievements that match key requirements of the job, and it's giving details of those achievements and skills. Why the company? So why they're passionate for working for Bloomberg, and because of the philanthropy and the service, the culture, the values, and it links with a previous experience that they've done that links with that. So again, connecting the two. And why the role? So why analytics and sales? And then drawing parallels with previous experience that they're injecting into it. So, it's after putting this time and effort into appropriate research, reflection, the prompt is starting to sound like a cover letter already, because the user is now injecting meaning and making the personal connections that AI isn't able to do. So, this is where it really benefits you to do that initially. So is this any better? If you scan the QR code there, again, I'll put the link to this in the chat as well. See if this one's any better, and I'll talk us through, so I'm conscious of time, what is good and bad about this one. I'll pop it up on the screen here as well, if I can. Yeah, so as you're reading through that, you can see it's still very long. It's still too wordy, still using generic phrases that lots of other applications will have. It's quite vague in many places. It's lacking a lot of personality. It sounds very formulaic still needs further attention to add value and make it your own. But it might have inspired some different ideas for the final draft or to iterate. But it is referring to more personal experiences to evidence the job requirements, which shows that the meaningful aspects only start to appear when they've been injected by the user in the first place. It is using British English due to asking for a UK business letter format, but overall, it still needs a lot further attention to that. Any other thoughts in the chat that are coming through? Any other things that might benefit? What would improve this a little bit? Thanks, Abram. Assumptions that an individual knows the customer base before employment shows naivety. Okay, evidence in one's own capacity to understand. Analytics and sales role. Interesting. So yeah, so making sure that their cover letter is really informed by research into the role. That they need to have researched what that customer base is, and to make sure it is that is relevant to the role. Thanks, Anna Maria. Everything sounds so good. How can we change it when everything seems relevant? Okay, fantastic. So it's this next stage is about making it your own. Okay, so personalizing it, because the Bloomberg will be seeing all of these cover letters exactly the same. And it's actually been critical of what it's generated. As I said, some of the content in that was still very, very vague and wasn't to the point. Employers like to see concise professional writing. Generative AI tools are very verbose. They're very sort of long-winded. That could go into the prompt, of course, to try and mitigate that. But overall, you need to be rewording it in your own sentences. Edit back in your own personality, your own voice, and actually make sure it's matching up with what you want to say in the application. And this is where you might book into a one-to-one to get your cover letter looked at and gain some feedback from a professional who can then help you look at how can we review this and make it even better as sort of after that first draft from AI. But yeah, being critical of what it generates, proofread, reprompt as much as needed, fact check, rephrase it in your own words where you can. And because it's so easy to tell when it hasn't been amended or edited. Common phrases that AI uses, like honed or aligned seamlessly with, suddenly everybody's saying these words and everyone's sounding the same. And employers are really getting frustrated about reading the same applications multiple times. And like that initial reflection, how do you stand out? It's still making it your own. It's doing that reflection, making sure you're talking about your unique experiences and using the advantages of AI in terms of helping you in the drafting process as you go through that. No, I know we've talked a little bit about cover letters there, but just applying this 3Ps model to other career-related activities as we sort of come to an end. For example, improving a CV bullet point. Maybe you've worked at a front desk assistant position, and there's a very poor bullet point here on worked on front desk answering phones and greeting visitors. I see a lot of CVs that just have a very surface level description of the role. So let's go through the 3Ps and see what happens. So preparation, research and self-reflection. What exactly did I do? So I answered phones, greeted visitors, handled admin. Okay, what was challenging or impressive about that experience? It was very busy, handled 50+ inquiries per day during peak periods. What skills did I use that are relevant to the vacancy? Communication, multitasking, customer service. Okay, what was any impact or outputs? What, did I receive any recognition? Well, most queries were resolved at first contact, so less reliance on senior management, use less of their time. I was praised, received recognition, etc. And so that feeds into the prompt. So that could be a new prompt where you inject your experiences in based on your reflections. So I want to evidence my communication skills. I regularly manage over 50 inquiries per day, giving the impact there, and it's bringing in some subject knowledge about what good CV bullet points look like. So it's saying I want it concise, professional in the task, skill, result format, avoiding vague language, generic phrases, want it clear and specific. So what does it give you? So it gives you a short bullet point, quite long. So responded to 50+ daily student inquiries at high traffic front desk using clear, efficient communication to resolve most issues at first contact, easing demand on senior staff and earning commendation for professionalism under pressure. So nothing overtly wrong with that. It could be refined a little bit further. It's a bit long, some vagueness in terms of, commendation for professionalism. What does that mean? So that might come into a different bullet point. And then you refine it, you make it your own. So you say managed 50+ daily inquiries by using clear, empathetic language, communication, so you're giving a bit more detail about the communication, and then giving a clear impact statement to that. So very quickly, that's just how that 3Ps model works for different aspects. And same with interview practice. So if you're using generative AI as a practice partner, again, the preparation, the research, what role is it, what industry, what skills and values is the employer caring about, what's in the person specification, what type of questions, what type of interview is it competency based, is it strengths based, is it situational, technical, is it a case study interview, what examples of star stories can you draw on? And then the prompt, act as a first round interviewer, so it's giving some context there for this graduate HR role, embedding the link. Ask me 6 realistic competency-based questions, one at a time, starting with handling conflict. Questions should cover topics such as insert criteria from person spec, you're instructing on how to interact with you, and wanting live feedback about the STAR technique and telling me if I've missed any parts. So you can either type, if you've got the application for your AI tool, you can use voice mode to practice verbally. I'd really encourage you to practice verbally as much as possible. And then it's, looking at what comes out of that. Are they focusing on the wrong skills? Is the AI sort of taking it from a particular assumptions? Do you want it to focus more on client communication, for example? Maybe reframe it to practice other types of questions and gain some initial advice on how to improve, and then obviously book in for a mock interview and some advice from the career zone after that. Okay, so a bit of a summary then, just before we come to a close. So hopefully I've got across some useful things that you can get from this session is, firstly, don't let the impressive speed of generative AI cause you to forget what an effective application looks like. It can help you get started and inspire ideas and speed up that drafting process, but only when you've got that strong subject knowledge to know what a good input looks like into the AI, to inject that into the prompt and to critically evaluate the output as well. Meaningful applications always require that personal touch, about your unique skills, your unique experiences and personality. So it still takes time and effort. It's not a silver bullet. You still need to look at the ways that what you can delegate to AI in this context, but always lead with your own strong subject knowledge when collaborating with AI tools in whatever context, whether it's for employability or in your career, in your sector. You'll have strong domain knowledge to use it for there. And we've got some advice online about how help with using AI there as well, so do check that out on the QR code. So we'll continue updating that as things evolve. But yeah, that's all from me. I'll hand back over to Fatou, and yeah, thanks for listening and for engaging today. I'll hang on the call for a little bit longer for any questions.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was incredibly insightful. Could we all give Simon a virtual round of applause?
Thank you.
Yeah, I personally found the point of preparation very important, especially about showing, not just telling. So that was very, very insightful. Thank you. I hope everyone is starting to think differently now about the reflection question of if everyone uses AI, specifically generative AI, like Simon mentioned, to write a CV, how do you stand out? So thank you. And a quick reminder that these slides will be available on the platform, so you can go back to them after to kind of explore. Thank you so much. So here are the questions. We'll just leave them up for everyone to look at. Thank you so much. That was very insightful, especially to see the point of view from an educator themselves of how AI is related to academics. Thank you so much. Everyone, please give Judith a round of applause in the chat as well, a virtual round of applause. So we do have some questions here. We have about 3 or 4 questions in the chat that we would be able to get into. And just like Simon's slides, Judith's slides would also be on the platform for you to access and take a closer look at. Yeah, so we have a quick activity for us to do quickly before we kind of close it off, and then anybody who has questions, you can stay afterwards after 3:30 and we can answer the questions in the chat. So I'm going to hand over to Lorenzo to do a very quick 5-minute activity showing you how to use AI to create a LinkedIn profile in real time. So you can try this, everyone on the call, you can try this as well whilst Lorenzo is going through it. So here's just a practical quick activity for us to do. And then we will kind of be showing you the checkout code or the check-in code after that and a quick conclusion. And then anyone who has questions in the chat, you can wait after, and then hopefully Judith and Simon can answer your questions for about 15 minutes. So Lorenzo,
Yes,
I'm gonna hand over to you now.
Perfect. Okay, hello everyone, good to see you all back. I'm just taking 5 or 10 minutes of the time after these 3 sessions, because I was thinking it would be nice to do a bit of an interactive thing all together and just try some stuff with AI. So this is mainly some stuff that also we started to see last week and this week, and that I just wanted to go one step further, which is kind of showing you the output. And I'm going to present my screen. So these are just examples I've put. I mean, we talked last week about several AIs and how they differ in their usage. So this is Perplexity. This is just an example I want to show from last week. Perplexity is really similar to what a search engine is. And I know some of you are using AI as a search engine to search things. It has advantages and disadvantages compared to Google. The advantage is quite clear, as you can see here, which is I can personalize the way I want to search. So if I'm going to go on Google, I won't put this. I will just search like what is an AI agent, and I will have quite a bland explanation, and I will have to search across several links. Well, if I do it through Perplexity, but ChatGPT or other AIs are fine. It's just Perplexity specialized on this. And as you can see here, it actually looked at around 80 sources. I can tell him stuff like I'm more of a visual learner and I'm a non-technical person, or I'm technical and I know Python, but not JavaScript, for instance, the 2 programming language. And this way, it's the advantage here is that it will personalize the search results based on my need and, for instance, of my level of understanding or my goal. The disadvantage, obviously, is the quality of the research, obviously, because it's not human-righted. So usually what I do is you click here and you go and you look at the actual sources once you find it. So it's a tool in the middle. Same thing for the CV or writing essays. And I've been using AI to help write my CV and write cover letters a lot. And I've done a little bit of testing also in various AIs and kind of seeing how they compare or reading at papers at more scientific research about the quality of the things they're able to do. Usually, in essays, it's quite simple. You give the essays, you make them grade, and then you see how they compare to actual students. And usually, two things work well here. So the first one is having AI in the middle, so nor as an ending nor starting point. So you start with your own ideas, what makes you unique, your own points, and you write it literally as it's literally the idea of the blank page. So it's like taking a blank page, writing as many ideas as you can without any limit. So it's expanding in the ideas, divergent thinking. Then you give it to AI, and usually it's good to give also some context. So what I'll give is usually as information, usually my CV, information about the company. So I try to go a bit deeper. So like I will download the website and say, look at the website company, and then information about the job role and maybe past things I've wrote, maybe my previous cover letter. And based on that, I'm like refine and improve my draft. Once I have the refined by AI is going to be really good at maybe putting it in a structure, making sure all the points are covered, and then I'll review it, remove all the hallucinations, and make it more targeted to exactly what I wanted, maybe either by prompting, so continue to prompt the AI, or just making the changes myself when it's faster. And then usually I also have one last step where AI checks my grammar, just make sure, because I'm not mother tongue in English, so it's quite helpful to just say, look at it, if there's any vocab mistake or things that could improve, and then I manually review all of this. But this is something that another human would probably do in the past. So just having another reviewer that I can have AI do, because it's quite a simpler thing. And then if I have another human reviewing it, it's going to be more in the realm of ideas. So like, what do you think of this argument? Rather than just read this and tell me like if the vocabulary is correct, because I'm not English. So that's a bit some tips. And I wanted to show you also something prompt engineering, which we talked about last week, touching on education. So I'm just showing some practical examples. And if you all want to do it, maybe now or when you have some time. So I take something I had to learn about here. It was the PDF by Google on prompt engineering. I give it to AI and I'm like, create a game to teach me these concepts. Very simply, so I say fully playable, it's an artifact, clear rules, extremely interactive and engaging. And this is first shot prompting, so it's literally just one prompt. And it's quite a funny game, and it can help you revise. So here, for instance, we created a game on prompting. So I have to write prompts, and based on how I write it, it's going to give me advice. So like, if I give the bad example, it's going to tell me, this is how you could improve your prompt. Then I say, then I improve things, and then it actually, maybe I can show hints. And after that, I have an actual game created by AI to help me study a concept. But here it is actually based on knowledge that I have. So usually what I will do is take the actual lecture information and put it directly in the AI, so it's grounded, and then have AI do it. And to show you that, I've taken an actual examples of an actual lecture, which is ours. So I've taken the 3 Canva slides, and I've taken the description of all the weeks, which is basically the one on the platform. And I've given that to another AI. I'm using several AIs just to show you that it doesn't really matter. In this case, Claude is better for creative things, and it's really good at execution. So that's why I asked him, because this is more of an open thing. Gemini 2.5 Pro is really good at coding and is really good at honing in on a task, focusing on something. So that's why here I have a more clear what I want. I have the slides. I think Gemini is going to do a better job. And in fact, it did. So it created a first game. There were some bugs in the game. So I had to give like changes. So like these are minor, like have 10 questions per week, or do not have questions focused, some examples like this, and add more interactivity. And this is the game that AI created. So I asked him, create an interactive trivia game based on the 3 Canva. And you can all play it. So I'm gonna send it here, and I want you all to play it. It's a bit long, so there's 30 questions. So if you don't unable to finish it now, you can finish it later. So you go to ai.extrachangemakers.co.uk/minigame. I'll put the link in the chat. Are you able to
Thank
access this,
you.
Fatou?
Yeah, it's working. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lorenzo, for these practical skills. Where we're actually seeing how AI works in real time. So I hope everyone can, we're going to be sharing these websites as well that Lorenzo has been using. And I hope you guys can try it out after the session and explore different ways in which you can use it yourself, whether it's for academics or just whether it's building a game like Lorenzo to help you learn, or for writing a CV as well. So I'm just gonna share my screen again, finally, and we're just gonna, oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, 1 second. We're just gonna close the session off and then, let me just find the right one. Sorry, it just keeps, okay. Finally. The right slides are up. Okay, so we're just gonna close the session off, and then like we mentioned, we're gonna, if you want to stay afterwards, we're gonna get into the questions that everyone has asked in the chat. So back to the reflection questions. Now that you've heard from our speakers, both Judith and Simon, we can have a look at the reflection questions as well very quickly. So if everyone uses AI to write CVs, how do we stand out? So you can put your opinion in the chat and have a bit of a discussion. And I will start off. I think, as Simon mentioned, it's really about how you use AI. If it helps you to clarify your ideas, you still need to be able to put in your own touch in order to make it unique. And then in terms of, is relying on AI undermining the core purpose of learning? I don't think AI is necessarily undermining the core of learning, the core purpose of learning. I think it definitely changes how we define learning. And especially as Judith mentioned, it's not necessarily about the technology, but it's about how us as humans use the technology. So you can put your opinions in the chat and we can have a bit of a discussion afterwards. So we will be just closing out the session now and saying a big thank you because it's already 3:30, like we said, and then afterwards we will be going into the questions. So thank you guys so much for joining our course. Here is the check-in code for today. So you can just enter that, and then I'm gonna let Lorenzo speak a little bit more about the certificate, but
information about that.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
And information about this, so you can fill this and give us the feedback for week 3. By Friday at noon, we will release another feedback form, which is going to be a separate form, which you can fill with a couple of questions that will help us also plan things for the next academic year and reflect on this bit experiment. In addition to that, once you'll have filled the feedback form, you'll have access to the certificate. So please don't send 1,000 emails asking for it because it's going to be after Friday at midday. I'm going to send a reminder email to everyone and clearly showing how to access the certificate, but everything is automated. So it's simply on the platform. You go in there's going to be another section at the end after week 3 with your certificate. You click on your certificate and we'll automatically open it and download it. So from Friday at 12, we're going to send an email and you're going to have the certificate on the platform and after filling a feedback form, and which is separate to the weekly, the session-based feedback.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so as Lorenzo mentioned, and as we've mentioned before, if you have joined at least 2 out of 3 of the sessions, then you will receive a certificate, and he'll be sending that out Friday noon sharp. So yeah, thank you so much. We're all going to say a few words before everyone leaves, but thank you so much for joining our course. This is the first time we've run it, and we've had such amazing guest speakers, such amazing experts, such a great turnout. So I hope everyone has enjoyed the session, has learned a thing or two over the past 3 sessions. And if you have any more questions, you can reach out to any of us and hopefully we can put you in contact with whoever you need. So yeah, I'm just going to hand over to Saara as well, maybe to say a few words.
Yeah, so just to kind of echo what's already been said, thank you so much for contributing and participating into our course. We look forward to kind of incorporating all feedback that we kind of receive, and also that we just hope that it's been a chance to upskill and a great learning opportunity.
Yes, it was a big pleasure to share knowledge with all of these people and this interaction. Remember when we were starting to plan the session, we're a bit lost. We're like, what are we going to do? How are we going to teach it? And we kind of set it up and say like, okay, we need to find experts because that's how we're going to add value added to the sessions. We started looking around and then we realized that here in Exeter, there is such a high quality pool of people with various experiences and knowledge. And we feel like, I hope Fatou and Saara, you feel the same, we kind of were able to take a bit in a really short time, but take a lot of this knowledge from different parts. And we hope that we gave you kind of a wealth of various approaches and aspects to what AI is and how big and important it's going to be, but also how to be kind of more relaxed and more open-minded and more positive, still with those points, but knowing how those negative points can be seen and mitigated. So thank you all for joining. You know where to find us if you have any question. Additionally, if you have a question about the AI agent section, feel free to connect with us or even on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if anyone who doesn't have questions or anyone who would actually like to stay and hear the questions, you can stay in the call and we can quickly get into the questions because I know our experts have to go. So let's get into some of the questions that we have in the chat so far. So I think the first question that we can kind of get into, and I can pose to both Simon and Judith. Simon, maybe you could go first, is Alejandro is asking, how do we address the digital divide, especially in countries where access to internet is still incomplete?
Wow, big question. Very big question. So it's a valid concern, as I mentioned in my talk. It's I think it's a combination of things, right? It's going to be policy, infrastructure investment. It's going to be education, which is we're doing our small bit in the whole grand scheme of things, and the ethical design of these tools. And we can hope and lobby that these AI companies are going to be thinking about these aspects as well, and opening up access to it. But I think we're still pretty much early days, aren't we, with sort of widespread AI use, so that the free version of ChatGPT now is doing the things that the paid for version did a few years back. So I think as time goes on, I think it's going to be more and more access to things out there. But yeah, I don't quite have the whole answer to that one. I think it's going to be a combination of many things. But yeah, I think education is a critical part of it. To think, okay, if you don't have access to those things, what can be done about it, and how can we help provide workarounds, or how can we lobby to make sure that access is given?
Thank you so much. Judith, would you have anything to maybe add on to that?
No, this is a massive question. And the problem is that we see in technology in general, whether it is AI. I mean, I've been working in educational technology since 1998. And generally what we see is that technology increases inequality rather than decreases it. And that's not to do with the technology per se, but it's generally to do with sort of poverty. And the countries that already have access to and are richer, they have access to the latest, and they can build the data centers, and they can. And my real worry is that the technologization, in particular, of education, so that it becomes more and more technologized, and who owns that data. So that, we all know that data is power. There's this age-old thing, sort of, if you don't need to pay, then you are then you are the one, the thing that they're buying. I mean, it's like, there's never anything free. So it's really important to really think and think carefully about sort of, who is actually controlling that data, who's owning it, and I think it's for countries to develop their own kind of ways of working with AI, their own tools, their own kind of data centers. Because if you're relying on other people, and particularly companies, we get into we might get into real trouble.
Thank you so much. Here we have a second question from Saxon. It's a bit expansive. Is the technology depressing our humanity and our capacity to exceed our own expectations of ourselves? If we are teaching that AI's analytical capability far surpasses that of a human, how will this affect the emotive state of those using it? Lower serotonin will further negatively impact cognition. Will these tendencies be carried forward in phylogenics? Yeah, thank you so much. Simon, would you like to say a few words as well?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Julie said, it's a huge question covering many different disciplines. So it's quite nice to see sort of an interdisciplinary question come through there, spanning sort of psychology, evolution, neuroscience, everything. Is technology depressing our humanity? I suppose it can, but it doesn't have to, is probably what I'd say, is that any technology isn't inherently dehumanizing. It depends on how you use it. So, it could link in with disconnection, de-skilling, displacement, all of those things. But if it's, used in a certain way, it might actually enable accessibility. It might have impact on learning, maybe even creative expansion for artists and the like. But again, it's how you use it. And I think we're still wrestling with that and the regulations aren't there. They're not keeping up with it. And we're all muddling through together on how to use it effectively.
Okay, thank you so
I can
much.
maybe
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say,
Lorenzo. I think this question is really interesting, and I agree with what the two previous speakers say. And I wanted to add a little bit from a scientific point of view, so you cited some points. So these are two studies that were done, but they were done around the 70s. I really encourage you to go and look at it. And it's basically about giving putting rat in a cage. And sample number one, it's the rat paradise. So they basically put these groups of rats in basically the rat paradise. I mean, they have unlimited food, basically, whatever they need reproductively and more. And the outcome of that study was the rats basically all started killing themselves. So they started killing their offspring. And after a little bit of time, although the carrying capacity of the group was much lower, so there were much less rats than the actual carrying capacity is how much the environment will have a number of rats, they all kill themselves. Although there are reasons why this study is a bit older, could be reproduced, but the main learning here is they are in a paradise, so they have nothing to do, so basically they die as a species. But from my knowledge, it's been reproduced. But rather than putting just the paradise, they put the paradise, but with games. So they put interactive games, they put activities to do things. People can correct me, this is not my field of expertise, something I've read about. But when there were these games, those rats were much more engaged, and they actually, as a society, they proliferated and they existed. And I think now Sam Altman is actually paid, I think, 5 million in collaboration with other companies to do a universal basic income research. And the results have just came back, which show that people usually spend more time with their family and spend more time and money on their health. But then at the same time, I think was with an extra 1,000 for free every single month. It was not a revolutionary, life-changing, like they were changing completely from working to non-working or stuff like this. So it was a bit of an adding. So one idea is if we're more productive, we can go toward a 4 days work week or a 3 days work week. So we still have to work, we still have to do things, but it encourages higher welfare, and a bit like kind of how the Nordic states are doing. They're working much less than the USA. Yes, their GDP is much lower, maybe even, but they work less, and so the productivity is much higher. So these kind of reasonings is how do we keep ourselves maybe with a future where AGI is there, so there is a universal basic income, and we basically don't even have to work or have to work a couple hours a day, maybe. How do we keep ourselves still challenged, entertained, and in a system that give us stimulus to be active and exchange? Saara, do you want to add on to this?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, obviously we're talking about AI in the context of employability today. And so what do you think will be, for example, I've seen kind of like apps that are being developed that kind of act as like invisible, like desktop kind of assistants that can aid you within calls. And I've heard that people kind of reference it as like a cheat sheet almost, if they're in job interviews or assessment cycles where they can just get direct advantage that obviously other people don't have access to in that moment. What do you think about how that will kind of affect recruitment processes in the future and the kind of accessibility issues with that as well?
Yep, I can take that one. So yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly in the talk about sort of AI software where that's, you know, recruiters are seeing candidates reading responses on the screen and sort of those live responses. First thing is they can tell normally when the recruiter is when the candidate is doing that, because like we've seen, when you're not feeding the AI with relevant information and personal unique things, it doesn't always kick out something that is usable or is specific and detailed enough for that particular instance. Now, whether it gets to a stage where it does do that and you've trained it, maybe you've got your own custom GPT that you've trained it on all your experiences and you're you know, getting it to kick out things that are really specific, they'll still be able to tell when you were doing it, but you know, from reading the screen and things like that, when they can sort of tend to tell if it's online still. But like I mentioned, they're moving towards, there is a trend emerging towards these online task-based assessments earlier on in the process, before the sort of in-person interviews, where obviously nobody can be using those AI tools that we're starting to see come through now. So, you know, these online assessments that they're using because of these challenges, it's sort of an arms race between recruiters using or seeing AI using candidates and recruiters trying to mitigate that. So it's very much on their radar, and that's why we're seeing these new online assessments come through to try and mitigate that, and earlier on in the recruitment process, try to ascertain the skills of that candidate, which is what they're trying to do at every stage of the recruitment process.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Anna Maria. Would you advise writing in your own words and then ask AI to proofread it and improve the style, grammar, etc., but keep the content? I guess I can pose this to Judith first in terms of academic writing, and then Simon in terms of CV writing.
Keeping your own voice, keeping your own ideas. Just be careful when you're asking it to improve the style or grammar of something. Don't just copy and paste what it then gives you back. Reflect on it, do that sort of personalization that we talked about earlier. You know, edit back in your voice and just take bits, maybe be inspired by bits to integrate into your own work where it's there. But essentially, you need to stay in control of that content. You know, accept, reject suggestions based on how much they align with your personal voice and the purpose of what you're creating, is what I'd say. But yeah, overall, that sounds a good approach to me. I mean, because I work with a lot of international students in the business school, and you know, that sort of confidence levels with English language feeds into that ineffective use of generative AI, where it is just, oh, it looks amazing, and copy and paste it. And I've myself, as a native English speaker, I've gone round in circles with AI content because it's not quite getting to where I want it to be, in terms of, you know, the subject or whatever you're talking about. So I think there's different challenges in different contexts, but yeah, as long as you're sort of coming back to it and making sure that it's saying what you want it to say and is aligned with yourself, then I think that's a good principle to go on.
Thank you so much. A question connected to what we've just discussed, our very last question from Kais. In terms of academic misconduct, if a non-native English speaker uses AI for proofreading, must they declare that use? Does it put them at a disadvantage? Should you really conserve all of the prompts and chats as is advised by Exeter?
Just continuing, it's still on this because I also found it really not bizarre, but the policy of having to keep every single prompt. I understand the importance, but there is a limit to that, and I'm going to ask you how I can kind of better work with it within boundaries, because I use AI a lot to gain knowledge right now, not to like create new knowledge, but to create knowledge. So I have to read a 100-word essay. I'm going to say, give me the maybe report. I'll say, give me the main points, especially mainly because I come from a more engineering background where it's a bit less attention to the entire, but more to the result. But then even for other backgrounds and aspects, I use AI a lot maybe to search a topic and ask, like, explain this sentence or explain this thing. And this can amount to hundreds, if not thousands of prompts. And to me, it seems a bit difficult and first technically to keep all this, and then also from conceptual, because it's the same thing as saying, I don't know, I have also a lot of prior knowledge when I come to do an essay, but it's really hard. Like, how can I keep track of what is my knowledge? So then people will feel that I've used AI for that, but I actually knew, I just wanted to check it up with AI, like I would check it up on Google. But with Google, I don't have to report that I checked the definition of a specific word. So where's the limit of what I actually need to report and what not? Because I understand for me, it's quite blurred. So how do I make it clear?
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat. But if anybody else has other questions that they would like to ask, you can just email us and we will then be able to send them over